there's like this little guy behind us, like on our, it's like, yeah, that's not the car that you want. Fucked up.
What's up, crew? Welcome to another video. My name is John Connie, aka Big Man Syndrome, and I'm pretty freaking stoked with the first episode of Prjct.POD, which is going to be Prjct.Garage's podcast. We shot this first episode in a format that I believe we can repeat with special guests, where we'll try to get professional drifters, professional race car drivers, professional everybody in the car world, as well as other YouTubers and enthusiasts of the like. So if we're at a Cars and Coffee and someone's got a cool car and they want to sit down and talk, we're going to use this format, which is pretty cool. Dove into our first car. We talked about what we did to it. We talked about the mistakes that we had from them. Talked a little bit about the Evo. Talked about the truck a little bit, but really focused on the E36s for now. So something that we can repeat and do more of with other guests. And then before we jump into the episode, just a quick reminder, we're doing a giveaway. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. As soon as we hit that number, we're giving away a $100 value Harbor Freight set of wrenches from Icon. If you're a subscriber, you're entered to win. If you leave a comment on the giveaway video that I'll put here on a card, you will also get an entry into that. If you post on Instagram, TikTok, or anything and you tag at Prjct.Garage telling us about your current or future project car, that'll be another entry. So as soon as we hit 1,000, we'll collect the data of all the entries and then we'll pick a winner and then we'll set up the next giveaway. Becoming a subscriber now helps us get to the dream state of what Prjct.Garage will be, which is getting your garage set up so you have all the tools you need to work on whatever it is that you're working on. So stop talking. Well, not really. I'm gonna let my past self talk, and we're gonna jump into the podcast. Enjoy it. I haven't tested it yet. I tried to test it. It was processing, so hopefully the audio is fine. Whatever.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Just was doing this.
That's what you do, right? This is Prjct.Garage. You figure it out.
Yeah.
And if you don't figure it out, you have a car that sits for years.
10 plus years right now. Fucking never financially going to recover from this.
Never going to financially even anything from this.
No.
Live, recover, whatever. So we're going to dive right into it. And the first one is, it's going to start with you because I think you have the more impressive one. And then I'll chime in because it's, what was your first project car? For real, which I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, yours for real is actually cool. So go ahead and start. What was your first car?
My first for real car.
Was it not?
No, my first for real car was my 97 Eclipse RS 5-speed that I got right after high school. I did so bad in high school that my parents never let me get my license when I was in high school.
Where's this story going already?
So when I graduated, I got my license and I immediately bought an Eclipse because that's what the car that I wanted since day one. And I saved up enough and convinced my dad to give me a little bit of money to buy an Eclipse. And what's really funny about that specific car, I was looking for, in my early years of not knowing how to work on cars, I was in the mindset of, get me a manual car. I don't care which version of the Eclipse it was, just get me it manual. And every Eclipse I was looking for, because I wanted the GSX, I wanted the all-wheel drive, I wanted the 4G63T, but none of them were manual cars. They were all automatics. And so I settled for the RS, thinking, all right, well, I'll just make it into a GSX, not realizing that the RS and the GS version of the Eclipse came with a 420A motor, which you can't all-wheel drive.
Didn't do anything.
Oh, it didn't come with anything cool outside of the fucking 5-speed. I really f***ed myself over on that car because I could have had a really cool. I literally had two of them lined up. I had the RS that I ended up getting, and then I had a GSX lined up, both with the same price, both had some work done to them. The RS had a lot more work done to it than the GSX, but both were kind of in the similar mileage, everything all together. And I went with the RS because of the manual. Looking back on it now, I would have picked the GSX and figured out how to manual swap it because I was doing everything else that I wanted to the RS. Ergo, we're here, still no turbo car.
That's funny though. Like I think I got into cars later, because my first car is hilarious. I got into modifying a car immediately after I got not a modifiable car whatsoever. But mine was a hand-me-down, and it was in high school. I think probably freshman, junior year. When do you even get your license? Actually, it's like
So, well, that's what, like, from what I remember in
sophomore.
high school, you had that, it was the Tercel, or it wasn't, was it the Toyota Tercel that you got?
No, Corolla.
The Corolla. Yeah, it was that burgundy, like faded
Yes,
Corolla.
I think it's a '95
Yeah.
Toyota Corolla, and I'm gonna like segue this because there's nothing cool to say about this thing. I got it from my dad because my parents couldn't buy me a car at all.
Yeah.
I guess they may have gotten him a new car, or he was driving a scooter, like a moped, and they gave me that car so I can get to high school and back. And the quick mod list for the Toyota Corolla '95 burgundy, like you said, seat covers, because the interior was ass.
The seat covers. I remember the seat
God,
covers.
Sony explodes because they look so cool. They sucked, so I took them out. And then I went and got from Pet Boys. I got those, what are they called? Audio World or something like that. It was like the most off-brand, but damn, they slapped. And then what else did I do? I think a shift knob. It was a red shift knob.
I did remember we did one actual upgrade to that car that was like horsepower. You got that engine intake. And we were like,
Wait,
was it
for that car?
We were 16 years old and we had stuck a fucking hard on for this fucking intake that you got. And was it, knowing now what we know, like it was a short ram intake on a four-cylinder Corolla.
I don't think that was the Corolla.
It was a Corolla because I remember looking at it in the parking lot and we were like, damn, this thing looks so dope. It's going to add so much power. And it did fuck all for that car. It was so bad.
I mean, yeah, the only thing that I did fun with that car, which was just torture the hell out of it. I don't even know if it survived me. I can't remember if it was something that just got so trashed that we got rid of it.
Yeah.
But I'd pull the e-brake all the time. And if I can dig deep enough in my old footage, I probably can find a video of me going around Sam's house with that little side street and just ripping the drive. That was pretty bad. So you already kind of mentioned some stuff, but what was like, let's keep it brief and say, what was the first mod you did to the RS then?
The first mod that I did to that Eclipse, it actually was a 2-for-1. So my cousin ended up buying me for my birthday a short ram intake from AEM and a B&M short shifter. And we put both of those things on at the same time. The car had already come with a modified exhaust and like a body kit that I completely f***ing trashed because I kept hitting everything driving that car. But we got those two modifications on pretty quick. I think it was like 3 months after I got the car, I was able to get that stuff in. Actually, it was a month after I got the car because I got the car right after we graduated high school. Like 2 weeks after we graduated, I bought the car, and then my birthday was in August. So we got those in pretty quick. And then I kind of went down this rabbit hole. Like, I'm going to modify the fuck out of this engine, get it ready for turbo without knowing anything about turbos or how to really install a turbo onto a car. So like I ended up buying like an intake manifold because Fast and Furious was like, the welds on the intake are going to blow. And I was like, I don't want my intake to blow up. So
I need a strong intake.
Yeah, I bought an AEM intake manifold. I bought cam gears, which do absolutely fuck all for the cams. Like, it just made it look cool. I got some bigger injectors that ended up not fitting on the car at all. They're for the 4G63T and not the 420A. And I got one other thing for the car, but none of it had to do with the internals of the car. None of it had to do with any of the exhaust manifold that I needed to put a turbo on. I didn't even know you needed an exhaust manifold to put a turbo on. I thought I could put it on.
Yeah, I mean,
I was so bad at cars at that point in my life that I remember, and to kind of keep this short, I remember that my clutch, I had beat the hell out of this car just dropping gears on the clutch, and I burned out the clutch, and my immediate thought process was, I can fix this. This is fine. I bought a clutch off eBay for like $60.
Red flag.
Yeah, like off-brand Chinese, and it was like Clutch Masters with a Z.
That's like the stuff on Amazon today where it has the longest description ever. It's like all the red flags.
Yeah, red flag everywhere. I should have known because the return policy on it was like, once you buy it, you can never return this. And I started taking apart the car where I thought a transmission would be, not realizing the transmission on the 420A because the engine is horizontal to the engine bay. And every car that I had looked at and seen and like kind of watched videos on at the time, since YouTube was very early, they were all vertical to the engine bay. So I thought the transmission was towards the middle of the car, and I'm looking for this like huge thing, and I can't find it. I'm like, where the is the transmission on this car?
Yeah.
It's attached to the engine block horizontally, and I worked on it for like a good 2 months, and I could not get, I couldn't even get the transmission off. And my dad was finally like, we need you to drive your own car because I'm tired of letting you borrow ours. We're going to take it to a shop.
Yeah.
We towed it to a shop. I gave him the clutch. The guy looked at the clutch and was like, I'm not going to put this in because it's going to blow up. Like, you're going to come back in like 3 hours. They ended up actually having a clutch for the Eclipse RS, a 420A motor, at the shop itself. He replaced it in an hour. It took me 2 months to get 3 bolts off of the transmission. He did it within an hour, and I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to work on cars to begin with. And that was kind of the killing point of working on that car, like thoroughly working on the car. I ended up selling all the parts that I bought, like that, the manifold and all that stuff. I was like, I can't do this. There's no way I can figure out how to do this. And it ended up just kind of driving that car into the ground and learning how to drive with it instead of working on it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest lesson learned, right? That you can pull from that. Anyone who's looking to get a project car today, just learn from our mistake, which is know what you're buying. Because for you didn't realize that, or I guess it's buy the modifiable piece. You bought the one that's not modifiable. It doesn't have support, or it's harder to find that support. Whereas the one that had the 4G63, very modifiable and a ton of support. Probably not it's still not easy to work on. Like you would have had the same conundrum with clutch, but it would have been better.
I would say that if you're brand new, you don't have any you've never worked on a motor, you've never worked on a car, you want to get into this space, you want to, you think cars are cool, you want to modify a car, find a car that one is super popular. For your first car, like don't buy your dream car. Don't buy a car that, you're going to drop a ton of money on and end up messing up because you're going to screw up the first car. You're never going to get it right. So buy like a Civic, buy something, something that has a lot of support, that there are a ton of those cars out there. A lot of people have done things to those cars. There's a lot of good forum support. There's a lot of good videos on YouTube on how to modify those cars, and something that's simplistic. The B series motors are so easy to work on, and they give you a good base understanding on how a motor actually works. Figure out how a motor works, look at videos, go to a yard and pull a motor, right? I am a big proponent of go to the yard and you don't even have to buy anything. Just work on a car. Just
go break a car.
Yeah, go and take it apart, and you can see how things are attached, how they're connected, what goes where, and how that affects the car and how it drives, like the drivetrain on it, and learn from that, and then go and start working on, building a motor or building a car. Once you get kind of adept to that, start looking at the dream car, because you'll have at least a base knowledge of how things are supposed to work, and you can move into the sphere and be with it.
I think it would also help to make sure that you're going to learn this no matter what, but pick the, this type and try to stick in that realm. So like technically my first project car is the E36, but now I have Evo, and those are very different vehicles to work on.
They are.
Changing the clutch or anything on the E36, you drop it out, you put it back in. It obviously doesn't run, which is going to be our next segment, and the Evo runs. But before we moved on, because we actually just basically did the what would you do differently, which is like doing the research and finding the car that makes the most sense for your skill level, for your confidence level. And then to build confidence, you go to the yard and then just make sure that you are buying something that actually has the support, whether it's the forums or it's parts. Because if you can't find parts, you can't work on the car.
Yeah.
But I want to do 2 side notes because hopefully I can remember both of them. I know I remember this one because it's burned in my brain. He said you killed the clutch. I 100% contributed to that. A little tiny bit. Tiniest amount. He said he bought the car right after graduating high school. Well, the day he got the car, I got to test drive it too. And I thought it would be hilarious to drop the clutch in first gear on his childhood household street. Just rip a burnout.
With that exhaust. And what I remember that so vividly because like my dad was like, he was so adamant about keeping that car clean. And you came over and he knew what we were going to do to this car. He knew that
That's
car
who
was
I
going to
is.
get trashed, but he was just like that hopeful, like, I hope this car lasts at least like 2 years. We immediately took the silencer out of that fucking exhaust. And the neighborhood that I grew up in, it was an old military, like, neighborhood that people bought these houses in the 1950s and like never moved away. So it was like people in their like 70s and 80s were like living in these houses, and this fucking
I know
18-year-old
this.
kid comes, rips a silencer out of an Eclipse with this loud ass exhaust, and his friend comes and drops the clutch on foot gear and just burning out the front wheel. And like the old lady across the street thought a bomb went off because she was like, I didn't know what was happening. So I got in a
Yeah,
lot of trouble for that. And I was like, I didn't even do it. I didn't even
yeah.
do.
You didn't even do that yet. Like you got
Yeah,
your test drives in, like a couple, and then I came in and I was like,
yeah,
"Yeah, let's do this. We're sending
yeah.
it." Man,
Uh,
I don't
but
think I'm going to remember the second one, so I'm just going to leave that there. And next time I'm going to take notes while I'm listening. But the perfect segue, which is the current state of our life, which I have several
yeah,
current states, right? But we're going to focus on the one that's common to us, which is our beloved E36s. We both have literal non-running, yeah, E36s that have their own set of problems. And the first question, which is going to hit a little hard, and I apologize. How long has it been dead?
I think we're coming up to the decade mark right now. Jeez. So I to give some background on that E36, once I killed the Eclipse, I was kind of running with a group of friends who were all into cars. We were all kind of working on cars, and I was the only JDM car in that group. Everybody had BMWs, and not new BMWs. We're talking about E30s, E28s, 80s version BMWs, which I did like the style. Like I liked the 80s 5 Series. I liked the 80s 3 Series. They were really cool, but I didn't like the engines within those cars, right?
Yeah.
They were they're very simplistic, easy to work on. So if you guys want to, what we were discussing before, if you want to get into a car that the E30s are a little expensive, but an E28 pretty cheap, very easy to work on, single cam, they still have the fuel injection. They have a lot of the modern-esque things, but a lot easier to work on. So you can kind of understand what a car can do and how to work on it. But at that point in my life, I wanted to really start diving into modifying motors, not just the car itself, but modifying a motor and getting as much horsepower as I can out of a motor. And so my friends convinced me to basically like give away the Eclipse. So I sold it for, I think, like $500.
I have a story like that too.
And I started looking for a BMW to kind of work on, since the friends that I had, they're all very good mechanics. Some of them are actually professional mechanics. And so I had the support from a BMW's perspective on working on those cars. And I ended up finding one of my buddies who was not really part of this group. They were part of like the hookah group that I was with. His dad was selling his E36 for very cheap because of the mileage on it. Super clean car, base model, type car. Didn't really have a lot of flash to it, but I saw a lot of potential in the car itself and what it could look like and perform like later. And so I ended up buying that one for like $2,000 and started the modification from there. And I did a lot of work to that car. I did a lot of work to the drivetrain. I replaced all the bushings. I did a clutch on it, did a short shifter, new exhaust, new wheel bearings, bigger brakes, new wheels. And then I started modifying kind of the exterior to make it look a little better because it had those gray panels and that just looked really ugly to me. And so we would do these yard runs where I'd go to the yard and find E36s in abundance and just pull parts from them. And I made the car look really good just from going to the yard. I didn't buy new parts for this car unless it was for an engine or drivetrain thing.
Yeah, I remember going on the.
Yeah, all the other stuff was just yard pulls. And then I got the balls to buy an engine. I found an M3, a 95 M3 engine on one of the forums that I was part of. Guy was selling it for super cheap because it had a timing issue. bought the engine with the ZF trans and the drive shaft for like $1,200. Got it to the house, and I rebuilt the entire motor. And it was the first time that I actually had the opportunity to rebuild an entire motor.
Yeah.
And it took me a good 3.5 months to do, where I bought new lifters, I reground the cams, decked the head and the block, put new crank bearings in, put new cam gears in, redid the chain tensioner, all the gaskets were replaced, redid the manifold, the intake sizing on it. So I got like a new intake size. I went from the 2-inch to 3. I did a lot of work to the engine, put it together, and when we put it in, I remember I was with Mike here. We put the engine in, we swapped it, and I was like, I don't think this thing is going to start, because I had never really done that amount of work to an engine. And it cranked twice and started up, and I was like, damn, this is amazing. I love this. I can do this.
Great.
I can work on engines. I'm fucking good at this. And so I drove it around like that for probably 1.5 years. And then the demise of the car was the day before Beamer Fest, because we would go to Beamer Fest every year. We would detail the cars a lot. And again, this is because we don't know what we're doing and we just kind of try shit and go. I ended up buying a power buffer to buff the car. And I wanted to really bring the paint, because the paint on the car actually wasn't bad for how old it was. I buffed this car at like 9:30 at night when you can't see shit. And I thought it looked great because it did shine really well. But what I didn't realize is I burned through like most of the clear coat layer on that car. And it just didn't show up at that time because it was buffed. And over the course of the next 6 months, the clear coat just completely destroyed the car. There's some rust areas, and it just, the paint went to shit immediately. And so my thought process at that point was, I'm going to get this car painted. And I had never really liked the Boston green color that it had. So I decided that I was going to paint the entire car, and ripped out the motor again to paint the engine bay, paint the door, what's it called? I forgot what those are. I'm running a blank, but the inserts on the door cards, pretty much paint the entire car a new color. And that's where everything went fucking.
I didn't even realize this thing's not dead because you messed up the drive.
No,
it's dead because you just burned.
Yeah, it's dead because I burned the paint. The car itself ran.
You just stopped
fine.
driving it because it was ugly.
Yeah, it 100%. The car was functionally was completely fine. I stopped because I didn't like the way it looked, and then I messed it up, and it's been dead for 10 years, almost 10 years.
Dead for 10 years because it doesn't have good paint. What?
Paint just sucks.
Hell?
Well, a part of me also, because I burned through so much of that clear coat, and as I started to go through the car and look at, where the hot spots were for when I buffed, I realized that I cut through some of that paint too, and there was rust showing up underneath that. And so I needed to, my thought process was that if I keep driving this car around with, the LA area that I was in, and my proximity to the ocean, the salt from that was just going to cut through that metal, and I would end up just, the car would be useless. It would rust through, and I have to do more repairs to it. So I wanted to make sure that I kept at least the car in and of itself somewhat clean, so that I can, all I had to do was paint over it and not replace panels.
Yeah.
But that backfired real quick, because life definitely started hitting me with other expenses that I didn't realize was gonna come through. And then also, the mechanic mentality, or the modified mentality. I have the engine out, I might as well do these modifications. And I just started buying parts instead of getting the car painted and putting everything back in and continuing. I have enough parts in my fucking garage right now. The cost of those parts could have painted the car 3 times over. I'm just being
actually, James Pumphrey just uploaded like his last upload. He says this exactly, and he used like the more you know style, but it's gold with stars, and it's the might as well. Once you get to a certain point, I mean, I've got plenty to talk about with the E36 that I have, but we'll save that for another time. But to jump in, mine's quick, obviously, because your backstory is very community related. Mine is, I'm your friend. And I'm like, I want an E36 M3. And then you looked on Facebook Marketplace or something and you sent me a link. I looked at it, I was like, hell yeah, 6,000. I'm down. I'm doing this. Bought an M3. The sad story about that is it was a very clean M3. A very clean M3. The only problem with it is that it's a 95 and it doesn't have an S50. So when they did an engine swap, because it was an automatic before, they got an S52 instead. So it's not a true 95, which would have been so much more valuable. Cool. And then, yeah, my death story is more of like, it's been 4 years and I've told this story many times on the channel. It's just the quickest way of this is I'm cruising down the freeway, coming back from a video shoot, looking at a fire in Vacaville, the plume of smoke, and I'm in bumper to bumper traffic. Finally opens up, so I bang it into gears and then fucking flying. I see some white smoke. I'm like, who the heck? What joker's got his car smoked?
Yeah.
Oh shit, it's me. Pull over, blew the head gasket a little bit, got it towed home, sat for a little bit, and then me and you decided, let's take this pony over to a skid pad and see if we can drift it. And then we spent a cumulative 7 minutes on the skid pad, blew out the motor mount and both transmission mounts. And then I did a lot of might as wells, which really killed my car. If I didn't might as well so much, like if I had just done the head gasket, put a new head gasket in ARP head studs, capped it back on, left the ECU the way it was, plugged it all in the way it was, I'd have a functioning car. But I decided to cut a bundle of wires, and it was the wrong bundle of wires.
I think the way, especially with the way that we're kind of approaching Project Garage, and one of the reasons I love doing this on this channel and wanted to start this channel with you was that we have our own separate lives and we can get around and it's not required for us to have these cars. We've always had this image of the cars that we wanted to have in our lives and the specific type of cars that we want to have in our lives. And when we got these E36s, we kind of both separately made the decision of, I'm going to make this car the way I want to. I don't care how long it's down for. It's going to be the way I want it to be.
Yeah.
And every time we come to that crossroad of like, well, I can just put this back together and it will work and I'll have a driving car. There's like this little guy behind us, like on our, it's like, yeah, that's not the car that you want. Fucked up. That's not how you want it to be. Fucked up. And
yeah,
you get to document those fuck ups so that other people either will say, yeah, I should just put the car back together, or hey, these guys decide to just send it. And whether we succeed or not, I'm going to do the same.
Yeah. Like speaking of what I want that thing to be a drift car.
Yeah.
And it is, I would say 70% the way there. I just need to figure out the wiring and I have a drift car because I've got a big ass ultra wide angle kit on that thing. Short shifter. I got a bunch of stuff on that thing. It's ready. It just needs to fire. It needs it needs to fire. And once it does, it's going to be good. So we're going to run through the rest of this section quickly. And that's, what's the last thing you did to the E36 before you took the engine out? Last modification that you did.
Like before it went down?
Actually, I guess last one you did, just in general, which I was a part of, if you remember. I'm pretty sure. Unless you did something else after. It was the macaw panels, delete panels. I think we did the backs. That was the last thing we did to that thing.
It doesn't even run. Yeah, but yeah, I guess that does count.
They cleaned up the back end, I guess. It made it easier for us to get in there.
Yeah, part of that build is, with the build that I'm trying to do, you've mentioned that you want yours to be a drift car, and, we're working on getting that. My car, the intention for my car, basically, in a nutshell, is I want to be able to drive this on the street, and when a Lamborghini gets next to me and thinks he has the balls, like, it's not happening. And so I want it to be kind of a, the race car look, but functional at the same time. So I've gotten a lot of parts that kind of symbolize that, but you can still drive it on the street. One of the things that I got was to delete my rear seat on the rear seat delete panels from MCA. So I don't have a rear seat anymore. And I could put my roll cage in. And I think it was like a random, like you were down here. It was just like a random.
Like, what can we do this thing?
And
sure.
Yeah, what can we actually do? And I was like, well, I got these panels that we don't really have to do anything to the back, from like paint or modifications perspective, so we could put this in. So we put in the rear panels We scratched a couple of them, which kind of is a
Yeah,
little,
because
but
you had to drill them yourself. They didn't come with. I don't think they came with holes that were like
they
ready to.
didn't, they didn't come with holes. As much as I like MCA, and this is with a caveat, anybody has an E36 that wants to get, aluminum panels, unless you do it custom, where you go to a shop, they custom make these panels for your car, you're
Yeah.
gonna have to do a lot of modification to get them to fit properly
Well,
or
that's
the
just
way
about
they are.
everything, especially
Yeah,
like fiberglass or anything
yeah,
that's cut or it's like made to fit. Other than like my Evo head unit, that thing is badass.
yeah.
Stop with
That
the
thing's
thumbs up.
cool.
Like that thing looks
What
OEM.
what
And
does
then I
not
got
do
one for
for
the
me?
yeah, it's I probably could turn it off. And then for the
Yeah,
Tundra, I got the same type of thing. It is off. Weird. Anyways, I got a new screen head unit and it looks completely OEM. It operates a little funky. Both of them have like their quirks because they're
yeah,
Android and talking to an iPhone, an Apple, but they look super clean. And
yeah.
that's always the goal. And then just to piggyback off of what you're saying is I think if you're trying to save money, which MCA is that sort of area where you're going to end
It
up
does.
saving money. Typically when you're saving money, you're going to get a part that doesn't fit perfectly and you're probably going to
Yeah,
have to modify further and have the patience to do that. Just like when I did the body kit on my freaking Lancer LS and it didn't fit and I just forced it into place basically. But if you were to go to like Drift HQ and drop a ton of money on just a complete dashboard, like and then the other part of this too is if you're building a drift car, who cares?
yeah.
It's going to look like
Okay.
shit. You're going to bang it into a wall probably. So who cares what it
Yeah,
looks like? But if you're building
yeah.
something like where it's like you want it to look almost like a show car. And basically you probably do want to get it to a point where it's like, put it on front of a magazine, take it to
Yeah,
SEMA, do
I want that double, like, I'm not really, I'm definitely function over form mentality. So I'll always pick function if at the sacrifice of the form of the car.
yeah.
That
So
doesn't mean,
no blah, blah, pew, pew for you.
yeah, yeah. Well, I will,
Used to.
I will always want at least something to look nice in the car. And I will try my best to make something look nice in the car because when I'm driving, yeah, the exterior of the car can look dope. Right. And that's really cool. You could be sitting at a cafe, you look outside, you're like, that's my car. That looks sick. Right. But 99% of the time you're in the car driving it. I want to look cool inside the car. I want to look around the interior of my car and be like, this looks dope.
Yeah.
Because I can't see
Yes.
the exterior. But that's kind of with what I'm doing on the interior. There's kind of two projects for my project car. There is building the car with the turbo and the horsepower and all the functionality of that. But there's also an interior build that I'm doing. I've been working on, I haven't really shared this with you, but I've been working on how to modernize the interior, not from an aesthetic look, but from an electronic look.
Yeah.
So like I'm planning on implementing like a computer that's in the car itself that connects to the Megasport ECU that I have. So I can actually do any type of tuning on the fly from my head unit. The head unit is the one that's going to be displaying all the information. So I can switch
Yeah.
between having music or doing some sort of tuning, or even if I want to play a video game through it, like I can do that too,
Yeah.
right?
I can play Mario Kart in the Evo. It's
Yeah,
cool.
stuff like that, right? So like I want to modernize the interior in a way that I enjoy being in the car, not just looking at the car.
Yeah. I mean, that's your E36 Endgame is the same as my Evo Endgame, which is I want enough power for it to be extra fun because right now it's fun. That thing
Yeah.
skips like right into first to second to third. It's just like your ass is stuck in the seat. That's fun, but it's only 300 horsepower and 500 is a comfortable number for the Evo. So I'm going to find the right path to that so that I have that for that drivable car. I'd like that to not be drivable.
Yeah, it's funny that it's so funny that now that we say that just the progression of cars. Back in like 2006 when we were looking at cars and we were first getting into them, right, and kind of really looking at what we want, because you've always wanted the Evo, I've always wanted the Eclipse, and I will most likely buy a GSX in the future. Like that is one of the cars that I probably will want to build through this channel. When we were looking at those cars, like 300 horsepower was a lot. Like you got 300 horsepower, you're like, I'm romping on people. Like I'm just
It's still are a
rolling.
little bit.
Yeah. Now you get 300 horsepower, you're like, nah, that's cool, I guess. Like it's not an impressive number anymore.
No. And it
It's
doesn't sound
500.
impressive either.
Yeah, 500 is like that's nice. That
Yeah.
500 is the new 300 from 2006.
Yeah, it's enough scoot too, because I don't think there's very
Yeah.
many off the lot cars that are in that range unless they're V's, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get.
I'm thinking like a lot of these cars too, like they're in that 300 range, but like trucks are 500 horsepower. Like, what kind of truck needs 500 horse? Like, you need torque. You need a tow shit. You don't need 500 horse. There's like, the TRX has like 7. Like, what are you doing with that truck, bro? Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
The cars that are performance cars now, like what the Evo was classified as back in 2006, are in that 5 to 700 range now. And so,
Yeah.
with an older car, you kind of build up to that, and it's not difficult to do. All the research that we've done and some of the builds that I've done with friends, it's not difficult to get up to that range anymore because of the technology, but
Yeah.
it does cost a lot of money. So
Yeah.
it can take a 180 horsepower engine to 600, 700. It's going to cost you some money. So we be wary of that. Anybody that's listening to this, if you do want to get up into that range, you're going to be dropping $10,000 to $15,000 to get your engine to that point, but it can last.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. That is light work right there.
Yeah.
$10,000.
That's just engine. That's just engine.
That's my not running E36 is about that much. Stop the damn thumbs. Not even making a thumbs up. Anyways. Okay. So we kind of we skipped around a little bit, but we got to one of the points, which the last section is, what's the end game? Yours is basically show car ready, but also ready to scoot and beat the other cars that think they're going to get you, which is how I felt my E36 when it was running. It's like people thought they could go, and they don't realize there's a 6-cylinder in there that's ready to freaking go.
Yeah.
And then I think we kind of touched on what is needed to get there. So my E36, honestly, I need to rewire it again. I think what I'm going to really do. Are you serious?
We're adding this to every video now. There needs to be a thumbs up.
I'm not going to use my hands anymore.
Every video, there needs to be a thumbs up somewhere in the video. I don't care. I will do it. I mean, when you come here, we ever film, you're just going to see in the background me do something like,
and then I'll edit a bubble around your hand. No, so I think I'm going to try to do the most minimal fix that I can think of, which came from the conversation with that guy at Formula Drift. He wasn't the most exciting person to talk to because he was so arrogant about what he was talking about. You remember this guy?
Yeah.
He was trying to get Bobby to sit with him in the stands, and he was texting me, and I was like, bro, you're coming at me as an expert, but in such a way that I don't want to listen to you. But anyways, you need several things for an engine to run. The most basic stuff is air, fuel, and spark, right? I know I'm getting air. I know I'm getting fuel. My spark is the question. I know I can make it spark, but for some reason I can't get the timing to spark it. So he said something that kind of made me think about maybe I just need to simplify it, because the engine will run without knock sensors. It will run without cam sensor. It will run without all the other sensors. But if I just get the crank sensor wired appropriately, which if I can simplify all the bundle of wires going into the ECU, I can test because the pin is wrong on the manual. That's what's happening. There's a pin that's misrepresented in the documents, and then it's different in the actual plug itself. So I think I've got too much going into one thing and it's just not communicating. So if I can get it to communicate at that level, then I can start adding those other pieces that help me get Dana kicked in, help me know that my engine's going to knock. So I'm going to start that process.
It's kind of the thought process of you take out everything you can to make it just run, right? And then you start adding things one by one to see where the problem actually could happen.
Yeah.
As you add things, you get to that part where it stops running. When you added something, it's like, all right, this was the problem before. Let's try to figure out how to make this run based off that. And then you just keep going down the line until you get to that.
That's what we tried to do the last time you were out here, right?
Yeah.
We dissected it to the point where I went, okay, can I turn things on without having the sensors plugged in, without the ECU? Can I just have the dash turn on and the fuel pump prime? Cool. That worked. We regrounded it to the engine block. Everything goes straight to the engine block. Can I make it spark without trying to crank it? Yes, we made that happen. Can I make it fire? No.
what the fuck? That's where we're stuck.
Part of that too, and I think I've said this to you a couple times, and I've been looking around my area because I just, obviously, but I moved to Newport, and now I don't have the yards that I used to go to. They're a little far from me. So I've been checking out the yards that are around here and trying to find a good one that has E36s just kind of in an abundance. But one of the things I think we should do, because we did do a lot of modification to that engine, right? We did do a lot of things to that engine that could potentially be the reason why it doesn't fire.
Yeah, I was going to compression test it next too,
Yeah.
just to see.
So we need to do compression tests, all that stuff, but I want to get, and I did check my ECU. I do have a silver label ECU that we could put for your S52. Just get a stock, stock harness, throw the stock ECU back in, throw the stock harness in, see if it turns over on that, then we know the engine, everything is good. And it's just that, the wiring on ECU, and we can rule that part out and start moving towards, all right, how do we wire this properly? And maybe even use that stock harness as a template to wire up to the MSI so that it runs properly, right? So
yeah,
definitely want to, and obviously a lot of this will start happening at a more frequent if you move down here, because we'll be able to spend weekends doing this stuff together instead of trying to fly to each other. But I think that's a route that would be more successful with what you're trying to do.
I don't know. My resistance is that I took everything out. There's no stock wiring whatsoever, and the engine harness alone might not be sufficient enough. I mean, it would be interesting since you have the ECU. Like my stock ECU is completely blown up because I tried to take the transistors out to make spark packs, and then there's no data, which I don't know if you need that for a stock ECU to fire, but I kind of imagine you would. But I mean, yeah, it's probably worth a try, because if you just connect everything that's supposed to be connected and try to crank it, maybe it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so last thing to say then, what is next for yours? Because there's two things that we could do next, right? And I was trying to figure out, once I do move, what's the first thing that we can try to plan out? And I think you've got two choices. It's like dissect the engine to get it ready to be put back in while also planning the paint, or we just start sanding that damn thing.
So it's going to be sanding.
All right.
I've kind of made that decision. I have enough parts for the car that to continue creating videos, even if it doesn't start up, right? To continue creating, I have enough content-based parts that we can make a really good series out of it. But building the engine for me and kind of getting the turbo set up and everything like that, it'll still just sit there because I won't put it in the car unless it's painted. So, it's going to be straight. I got kind of my garage set up now from the move. There's a couple of other things that I need to do to the garage to kind of finally get it finished so that I can start sanding. But it's going to be sanding, right? I'm going to go through and we're going to attempt to paint this car. It's not going to go well. I know this
is going to come amazing.
I have
look better than what currently looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have enough experience with my fuck-ups when I try something that I don't know anything about, i.e. replacing the clutch on my Eclipse. I'm going to attempt to do this. I'm a little older now. I know to be a lot more patient. I know to do a lot more research instead of just kind of throwing wrenches at it and hoping for the best. But we're going to attempt to paint this car ourselves and see how that goes. At the very least, I would be able to paint certain areas that aren't really looked at under a microscope, like the engine bay, like the door jam. Door jams. Yeah. Areas that it's okay to fuck up on the paint a little bit because it's not really looked at a lot. And then if we mess up the exterior, I can go get it painted and it'll cost me a lot less to do than what I originally intended, was to take a shell of a car, drop it off at a painter and have them paint everything, right?
Yeah. Expensive.
So
takes a lot of time to find the person.
And there's a lot of work that needs to be done to the body, not just from a sanding perspective. I did get the felony form over fender.
Yeah. You did, land your big body on the hood and dent it.
Yeah, I jumped on the hood and dented it. Another reason why I'm looking at the yards to see if I can
for a hood.
This is not the first time. One of the doors on that car is not the original door. I got it from another E36 from the yard, and it was a Boston Green E36 paint match. You couldn't, obviously you didn't know that it was a different door. So my passenger door is a completely different door from a different car, not matching bins at all, and it fit just fine. So I know I can get another hood, fit fine. And I kind of want to do this because I do want to cut the hood for hood vents for the turbo.
Yeah.
And so I'll probably mock up the old hood to see, for the vents and the hood pins, right? Because I ripped out the latch that holds the hood down. So I'm gonna have to put hood pins in, but be able to mock up that old hood so that we get it all right, and then I'll use that as the template for the new one. So definitely looking for another hood, probably at a yard that we'll grab. But yeah, it's going to be sanding. It's going to be mocking up all the wide body, or the over fenders, not really wide body, over fenders. Doing some Bondo to areas, because it's a 30-year-old car now. And not really for my storage, but just over time, there's dents and small things here and there that you can't really tell that's there unless you really look at the car. But since I'm doing this and I want it to be clean, I'm going to have to fill those things out. So I'm going to spend a lot of time on the body trying to make it as clean and shaved as possible so that it comes out right. And then we're going to attempt to paint it. And I think the actual painting is not going to be hard. It's the prep.
It's the sanding.
Yeah, it's the prep for all of this is going to be a nightmare.
It's going to be horrendous.
So we'll see.
But we can go super hard. It's just so in the future, it depends on what type of space we have. If I end up with a 3-car garage, I'll be able to lock up one of those garages. We can trailer the car down and we can do it in my space. Or if somehow I'm able to swing a garage for a project garage, then we could really get down and dirty and actually take apart the car fully. So it's not like, the easier way to paint the doors is to have them off so you can sand them surface that's not vertical.
Yeah.
Taking the hood off, taking the fenders off, taking it completely apart so that it's easier to do that work. That'd be great. But you can't do that in a 2-car garage where one of the spaces is taken by a vehicle that needs to park there.
Yeah. I have to give credit to my wife. If she ever sees this, she is fully on board with everything that I'm doing with the car. She encourages me to do stuff with the car. And one of the things that we did talk about when she asked me how I'm going to be painting this thing, it was, well, don't you have to take things off the car to paint it? And I was like, I do, but since your car is going to be in the garage too, it's going to be a little difficult for me to hang things in the garage and, paint that. And she's like, well, I'll just park on the street. I don't care. So she's fully on board with me just taking the entire garage to paint this fucking car to get it done. So I think even with us not getting a separate garage, I will be able to take parts off at least for a weekend or something while it cures. Maybe not sanding it as much, but to paint the actual part, she's totally on board with me ripping that car apart, having it all around the garage, painting what I need to, and then putting it back on. So I got really lucky in that aspect. I got a wife that wants me to finish a project car and dump money into it. Even though
a lot of people that got that.
No, I got lucky, man. I got lucky. She was like, hey, if Zeke or Logan doesn't need something, like, you can use that money. Like, it's fine. They don't need to go to ballet class.
Well, that might not go well later on, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
All right, hope you enjoyed the episode. I know I did. I had kind of mid expectations of that, how that was going to go, but I think Justin and I really dove into some funny topics, and it brought us back to some of the memories that we had in working on cars and why we fell in love with working on cars and why we started this channel. While we want this to be a giveaway channel in some form when it comes to tools and the garage items that you need to do project cars, we're also very passionate about working on our cars. And at one point he does talk about like the it zone, and that's doing exactly what you want to a car. Like, I could have at many different points made this car run, but instead it up. Let's go. That's gonna be it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're new, join the crew. We're gonna be doing a weekly podcast as much as we can, diving into a bunch of different topics, and then when we can, we're gonna be uploading pieces of content like you've potentially seen in the past. And if you're not new, you know exactly what to do. Hit the like button, leave a comment, share this video. Those are the ways that we grow the crew. And until the next one, I'll see you later, crew.
Look, back and I'm better than ever. I think I got a vendetta. Oh, now they call me, I seen them. All of those times getting severed. I told them all I can let up. They get not tired of me never. Give me a shot and I swear I shoot like Berettas.